and welcome to Adapt with Danette FM. My name is Danette Fenton-Menzies. I am the author of The Adaptable Leader and have spent a number of years in the leadership space. Also, I'm an executive coach, a speaker, and a trainer and facilitator, and podcast host as well. So welcome into the conversation. Jez, how are you today, Jez?
I'm good. A little bit tired. I think we're both feeling a little tired today, but you know what? We're adapting and bringing our own unique vibes to this podcast. Now, today is a really good podcast. We just both happen to be tired today, so. But yes, no, Danette, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm, of course, your co-host, and I am your son as well. Yes. I also have done a bit of stuff in stand-up comedy and writing for TV as well. But I'm here to have a bit of fun with you and explore some of these ideas. You also have run Magical Learning, which is a training and facilitation organization, for over 25 years successfully, working with massive companies like Westpac and the Australian government, just to name a few. I mean, there's heaps in there.
Yes.
And then also international people you've worked with. People might have known names like John Mattone and Robin Sharma. You've actually collaborated with them and built stuff with them. So it's amazing to be here. It's amazing to break down these insights. And of course, Danette, you are an adaptability expert. So we're going to have to help people adapt. If people are listening to this and they're thinking, I'm struggling a little bit, this is the podcast to listen to because it's going to help you adapt. So Danette, Thank you very much. How have you been this week, by the way?
Oh, it's been a really good week. The snakes are out. So we have finally sighted, so on Saturday, saw 2 dead ones on the road, and then we were hanging out, washing on the line, my mum and I, and there was a live one in the garden. Yeah. So we left it alone, and it was its first day, clearly, because it was very sluggish. Anyway, it was good, but life is good.
Keeping you on your toes there, the slippery creatures.
Adaptable in that instance. I love it.
Well, Danette, we're going to be talking to Darren Fleming later in this episode, which is a really, really good chat that you had, really interesting. But before we get to that, Danette, we've got to start with as always, our usual opening segment, which is, of course, Adapt the News. Alrighty, Danette. So Adapt the News is the segment where we look at a current news story and it involves adaptability, and we kind of take your unique adaptable lens to take a look and pick out some important bit of information. So this one that I found this week was actually on a website called goodnewsnetwork.org. And so this has a lot of good news stories, and I was interested in good news stories because I feel like they often involve elements of things coming together in a really nice way. And the headline of this story, written by Good News Network, is World's Only Bookstore Airbnb has 2-year waitlist for guests wanting to sell used books by day. Now, just to give people the beginning of this story, more than 450 guests have enjoyed accommodations in the world's only bookshop Airbnb, where guests spend the night and run the store during the day. So what the idea is here is that it's sort of not only an Airbnb, but it also kind of gives you a bit of an experience as well. So Danette, I wanted you to just give your sort of thoughts on this story.
Well, being a massive book lover, I'm like, oh, how can I sign up for that particular Airbnb? So it had me at the first bit of it. I love this idea because what it shares is that we're all different, and the person who bought the bookstore and then decided to make an Airbnb was like, well, I like the idea of bookstores and Airbnb, so I wonder if other people would like that too. And so they've allowed people to have an experience in Scotland as well as staying in somewhere quite unique. So I love the fact that really there are no rules around the sales because it's a used bookstore, so people can experiment. And so they were talking to 2 girls in the article who were talking about it was a particular time in China for them in terms of celebrations, and so they were trying to bring that into the theme of the bookstore while they were staying at the bookstore. So in terms of adaptability, that idea of let's combine some ideas and see what we come up with. Let's experiment and let's bring in a whole stack of different people who've got an interest in what we're doing, and let's see what they do and play around with and, experiment. So for me, this is like, I love the fact that it's good news, and just it totally shows how adaptable we can be if we're open to trying new things.
Danette, great insights there. I think also one takeaway for me is that how much it opens up the idea of what an Airbnb is. Because this is people essentially doing free labor that they're paying to do. Actually, it's not even free. They're paying to do the labor. But it fits this sort of fantasy of what these people want to do in their life, but they may not have the opportunity to do it. And so these people are not only getting free stuff, but they're also getting people who come in and actually get to kind of live out a fantasy, which is in some ways really exciting, because I can imagine the customer service there would actually be amazing, because these are people who are literally paying to do this. So it does open my mind. What potential does this have going forward into other ideas people can have for what people might do? Like, is there going to be something where maybe you could stay at a castle and pretend to be like a jester? Or, or
I love that.
Someone fixing the stables or something. I mean,
Yep.
or, if you like cowboy stuff, living in some very rustic thing and maybe helping out with the horses. Is that a type of Airbnb? It's really interesting.
We maybe need a snake wrangler here. Just saying.
That's it. We need to get an Airbnb idea for that one.
I love that. Yeah, it's not generic. And I think that, we often don't think about the fact that there are others that have similar interests to us. And so, I live on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and I could totally see now that there would be people that would love to come and experience this as, part of an experience. So I love that they didn't say that they can only just stay in the bookstore. They actually get to experience the bookstore. And as you said, they're happy to pay for that experience. So I think there's a whole lot of ideas we often have about what business and travel and tourism look like. This is a really good example of how we can adapt and actually create win-wins for everyone.
Yeah. And I mean, it's very exciting. I love where the potential of this idea goes,
Me too.
Maybe I could work as some video game character or something. I'll have to work it out. But
I love
Airbnb, call us. We've got ideas.
Yes, we have.
Well, that was the Adapt the News segment. Thank you very much for that, Danette. I feel like we've really analysed that story nicely, and I hope people are walking away with some good ideas.
Yes.
Now, to sort of come up with good ideas like that, I feel like you have to have some sort of mindset mastery. And speaking of mindset mastery, let's talk about your conversation with Darren Fleming, as that's the theme that we'll be talking about today. So Darren is a behavioural scientist, but he is so much more than that when you get into the conversation here. I was wondering, Danette, the conversation you had with him, is there any key things you want people to keep their eyes and ears open for as you go through this conversation?
Yeah, and I'd probably prime it, and I really like Darren's philosophy. So he talks about the Stoic philosophy, which is that in life, the obstacle is the way. So often we see obstacles as, I don't like it being here, I'm going to resist it. And, in my book, I talk about the accepts model where, when there's challenges and stuff, resistance basically is futile. You're much better to accept and navigate through that. So I like that sort of as his underpinning thing around how you deal with life and problem solving and stuff. And then I really like how he goes, there's both the external view of what's going on, and more importantly, it's learning about what's going on inside you. And he shared an example towards the end where a friend of his he caught up with, and this friend was absolutely sure that another friend had ghosted him, and he was rabbiting on and, doing this and blah, blah, blah. This is the reason why. And then he stopped himself about halfway through and went, I totally just made that up, didn't I? And so that inside reflection of where we make a whole stack of stuff up to try and get certainty. And in fact, that is the best place to learn to problem solve. And, if it's really hard, we've probably created that difficulty rather than looking for how do we do this with ease. So I love the fact that Darren's really shone a light on what's going on inside our brain and learning to master that through, his great mindset mastery. So what about you, Jez? Any key things you'd like the listeners to listen for?
Well, I mean, I think that this is one, you mentioned it. I was going to say the obstacle is the way. The thing that comes up for me with that one, which is something that says right at the start, so don't worry, it's a real easy one to get involved in. But the obstacle is the way. I like this because it reminds me of video games. If you ever don't know which way to go in a video game, head to where the bad guys are. That's the way you're supposed to be going. So that's what this reminded me of. But I think without further ado, Danette, I think it's time for me to throw to your conversation between you and Darren Fleming.
Hello and welcome to the Adapt with Danette FM podcast. I'm Danette Menzies, and today I've got a guest with me, Darren Fleming. Now, Darren, we always like to check, how's your week been so far? And I know it's only Tuesday.
Tuesday,
It is
I think.
Tuesday, isn't it? Yeah. But I know that you've had a fun week in the last week. So I'd love for you to share.
Well, I had my 50th on Saturday night. So,
Congrats.
a lot of people on Tuesday would still be recovering. I'm not, because I don't drink, because I realised a long time ago it takes too long to recover. But I've been enjoying life as a 50-year-old, which
How good's that?
It's very good, because apparently you get to the point where you can say, I don't care what others think if I'm happy in me.
Totally.
Which I reckon you should take that opinion from about 3 years old.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. So welcome to the podcast, and I'd love for you to share a brief intro with our viewers and our listeners, because we do both audio and video. Tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. Well, I am a peak performance strategist / behavioral scientist. So I look at behaviors and I work out what's going on. And I wrote the book, Mindset Mastery, How Do You Do Less and Achieve More? My background, when I left school, I wanted to be a lawyer. Got a job at one of Sydney's top law firms. They were flying me around the country. I was assisting barristers in court. And one of my mentors said to me, Darren, just remember, no one ever calls their lawyer and says, hey, I've had a fantastic day. Can I tell you all about it?
So true.
So I stopped studying. They sacked me. The only job I could get was selling vacuum cleaners door to door.
Wow.
Did that for 12 months and 2 years of telemarketing, 3 years telephone debt collecting. Then I had an epiphany for one of the companies I was working for, that the boss was awesome at what he did, like amazing, but he was terrible at selling it to us as staff. So I went off and got myself a degree in psychology and combined it with what I know and my background in elite sport, and wrote the book Mindset Mastery. And that last month or a couple of months back got printed in Japan. Well, not just printed in Japan, but published in Japan.
How exciting.
And by one of the big corporate Buddhists over there. So it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, I've seen that on social media. I think that's pretty impressive. So that's so cool.
But for those who haven't, and are watching, there's a copy of the book.
Oh, I love it. How good's that?
There's a copy of an English one.
Excellent. How beautiful is that?
It's very exciting.
And we're doing season 2 at the moment, and we're looking at collaboration and problem solving. So I thought we'd start, given your experience, what have you seen or experienced that helps you with collaboration and or problem solving? Particularly, I'm interested from the mindset mastery perspective.
I want to take a macro view of this first, and then a micro view, which is not economics. It's just... I love the Stoic philosophy of the obstacle is the way. That if you want to achieve something in life, you have to go through that obstacle. You sit there and you go, I want to be, a multimillionaire. And the universe, I believe, I don't know whether it's true, but it's certainly useful. I believe the universe goes, excellent, you want to be a multimillionaire? We will give you everything that you need to be that multimillionaire. If you were already good enough to be that multimillionaire, or whatever it happens to be, if you were good enough to already be that, you would be that. But if you're not that, it's because you're deficient in some area, business, execution, or whatever it happens to be. It could be dozens of things. So you want that goal, the universe says, awesome, you can have it. Bang, here's the first obstacle you need to overcome to develop the skills so you can be that. When that obstacle comes up, we have a reaction to it. Damn it, I was going so well and now this has happened and it's not going to work, blah, 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 blah. And we get really angry and frustrated, or whatever it happens to be. It was Carl Jung, a student of and eventually contemporary to Sigmund Freud, the grandfather of modern day psychology. He said that until we make the unconscious conscious, it'll continue to turn up in life and we'll simply call it fate. So what happens is, I want to become this multimillionaire. The universe goes, okay, you've got to overcome this problem. I have this energetic sensation and I go, damn it, I'm not meant to be a multimillionaire. I'm going to give up. And then, 6 months later, you want to do it again. So I'm going to be a multimillionaire. The universe goes, awesome. Here is the problem. We have the same reaction. So at a macro level, everything is happening for you, not to you.
My favorite saying.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yep.
And then at a micro level, it is how we react, not to what's going on around us, but to what is going on inside us. So back to your question about what have you seen that helps you with either collaboration or problems?
Yep.
What I see as the best thing to focus on is how am I reacting to the energetic sensations that I'm experiencing in my body?
Yep.
When you put that to the top of the list, you get through problems so much more quickly.
Say I'm facing a problem and I'm just really stuck and the energy inside me is not great. What would you suggest I do?
Well, there's two parts to this. First of all is there is a problem in the outside world, i.e. on the outside of your skin that needs to be addressed. But the first problem is on the inside of the skin, which needs to be addressed as well. Addressing what is on the inside of the skin does not absolve you of responsibility of what's on the outside of the skin. Mm-hmm. All it simply does is makes it so much easier to address what's going on around you. So at the moment, our economy is, well, it's not quite tanked, but you can see it's in the process of. And what happens is, say you're a small business owner and you have the problem of, do I have enough money to make wages in the bank this Thursday? And there are certain things you need to do to get that money, sell more, collect more on outstanding invoices, overdraft, whatever it happens to be. Those things need to be done. But what happens is at 3 a.m, you've been asleep for a little bit and that thought comes up and all of a sudden you're bolt up awake and you can't get back to sleep. Why? Because you keep churning over and over and over on what it is you're going to do. To make the best decision tomorrow, you need to be able to think clearly. To think clearly, you've got to have a good night's sleep. So when you're awake in the middle of the night, the macro problem is you've got to fix out the finances. The micro problem is what's going on inside. To get to sleep is not about solving the problem there and then. It's actually about solving the energetic sensation inside your body.
Nice.
The way you do that is simply pay attention to the energetic sensations.
Awesome. Oh, all right. We'll talk more about this as we go. So my next one I'm really interested in is sharing an example of whether it's poor collaboration and or problem solving. And the big thing is, what were the impacts? And I'd be really interested in both the internal and the external impacts.
An example of poor problem solving. Geez, we're seeing that in every instant around the world, aren't we? Anywhere there is a problem, it's being poorly solved. They might be doing the right thing in the external world, outside of the skin, but until we make the unconscious conscious, it'll continue to turn up in life and we will call it fate. So company owners, parents, partners, the vagrant on the street, everybody, we make decisions based on the energetic sensations we're experiencing. And what happens is if our subconscious wants to get rid of some programming, it will drive us to make a decision that we think is in our best interest, but it's about activating that energetic sensation inside us so we can make the unconscious conscious. An example of poor decision-making, poor problem-solving, is where you solve the problem, but a short period of time later, it might be a couple of years even, you have that same problem again. You aren't solving the problem from an internal perspective and how you feel. Classic example of this is the too much month at the end of the money. The problem is I don't have enough money to get through the month. I need a promotion. If I get a promotion, another $10,000 a year, that'll solve my problems. Yay, you get the promotion. And for 6 months, you're fine. But after 6 months, what happens is you still got too much month at the end of the money. And you need to solve that problem again. Yeah, and I'd love to claim it as mine, but it's the late, great Jim Rohn's.
Oh, he's awesome.
He was, he certainly.
Yeah.
So that's, if you see the same life patterns
Yeah.
coming up as an example of poor problem solving, you're simply solving a problem in the external world, not the internal world.
Based on your experience, what tips do you have for others, including young people, which is a bit jazz added, around developing their problem solving and collaboration skills? So I'm particularly interested to hear in your mindset mastery around how that supports people to get better at both of these elements.
The first is to develop self-awareness.
Tell me more.
There are so many people who just don't have that. I recently heard a young person saying that the reason they failed that driving test is because the program we had to look at was set back in 2003 and it just doesn't make any sense today. And that's why, because if it had been more up to date, I'd be able to pass it. Because I'm part of the instant generation on TikTok and I had to do it on a computer. It's just not right. Well, if you look at it from a self-awareness point of view, you realize that the rules haven't changed that much.
Yeah.
And whether you're on a barely Y2K compliant computer or looking at it on your latest iPhone, you've got to know the rules. And what happens is, if you want to solve problems, become aware of what are you reacting to.
Mm-hmm.
Are you reacting to the energetic sensation you're experiencing in your body, or are you reacting to what's going on around you? To explain that, to give it some understanding. There's no such thing as a stressful environment, okay?
Yep.
If an environment is stressful, it will stress everyone the same. So a bucket of hot water, if you and I put our hand in it, we're both going to burn our hand.
Yes.
Okay? That's because the environment is causing. My friend Pollyanna, she loves skydiving. Me, personally, I think it's terrifying. She's done over 1,000 jumps.
Wow.
So if we're standing on the side of the aircraft, she's excited because she's ready to jump out, and I'm terrified and ready to pass out. It's not the environment causing the problem.
Yes.
It's got to be something else.
Yes.
It's the story going on inside our head. She thinks it's amazing. I think it's terrifying. When you realize that most of the problems that you encounter are actually inside your head, it gives you the fast track for solving them.
Love that. So then, what's your favourite example that you've seen where people have used their mindset mastery around perhaps problem solving and or collaboration? And I'm curious why it's your favourite example.
One of my clients, I was talking with him one day, and he was talking to me about how in his personal life, this friend had ghosted him. And he's talking about, oh, you know, we were really good. And then I said this in front of him, and then he left, and I haven't seen him again. And talk. And he's going, I reckon this is going on, and I'm going to try and do this, and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, he needs to understand that I'm allowed to think this. It went on for about 20 minutes.
Wow.
And then then he got to the point, he turned to me and said, I'm making this up, aren't I? And I said,
a good realization.
yeah. And he goes, all of he really knows is last time he saw his friend was that date, and he has not seen his friend since.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else beyond that is simply a story that he has made up. He's making that story up, attributing actions and motivations to another person, and then judging that other person on the motivations that he made up. Like, that is just bizarre. But we all do it.
Yeah. I was going to say, I've never done that. Nodding my head for the listeners.
Yeah. And that causes, and that's why I say if you look at problems around the world, most problems aren't being solved well because people are going through not understanding that I'm attributing lots of things to you.
Yes.
And judging you for that. Now,
yep.
The ability to war game any situation is invaluable, because we can use our imagination to say, well, okay, I'm going into this negotiation with Danette. She could, last time I saw her, she said this, that means she could do, or she could do, or she could do.
Yeah.
And that's a valuable thing to do.
Yes.
Don't become attached to it.
Mm.
Realize that what you're wargaming is simply a story, a possibility. And when you realize that, okay, if Danette says this, I'll do that. Or if Danette does this, I'll do that. That's fine. But don't go in prepared thinking Danette's going to say, and therefore I will.
Yeah.
Because you don't know.
Yes.
And you could end up making a big fool of it.
I love that advice. And, you know, it definitely goes with the adaptable leader, and why we've created this podcast is to share ideas with people on how to be more adaptable. So I love that. So is there anything else you'd like to share, including any helpful resources for our listeners and viewers?
Well, helpful resource is mindsetmastery.online. And what that is about is that's just a free 5-day rapid mindset mastery. Teaches you how to understand what's going on in your body, so you learn how to deactivate that and not react to it.
Nice. That's
other
very
resources. Suppose you get my book.
Yeah, hold those books up again, particularly well, both of them actually.
If you speak Japanese, you can get the Mindset Mastery Japanese version. I don't know where. I can't even find it online unless my friend sends me the link for the Japanese book. But the Mindset Mastery book, you can get that off my website, darrenfleming.com.au. And what that focuses on is how to pay attention to what's going on in your body, how to identify when you're telling yourself stories, and how not to get caught up in what it is that you are feeling in your body that you think is true. It's a feeling, not a fact.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So, Darren, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners and viewers? And also, particularly, where can they find you if they'd like to reach out to you?
You can find me at darrenfleming.com.au. What would I like to share? I love, there's so many ancient philosophies I love.
Nice.
The first is as within, so without, which is Hermes Trismegistus, who was Hermetic philosophy, think 8000 BCE, so about 10,000 years ago.
Yep.
And his theory, and it's been shown to be so true, as within, so without, as without, so within. If you want to know what your mind is really like, have a look at your life. If your life is scattered and chaotic and all over the place, that's what's going on within.
Love that.
And you want to know what it's like within, just have a look at what's going on around you. So that one. And then the idea of, so I'm giving you three: Hermes, as within, so without.
Yes.
The second is I create everything in my universe. Why do we do that? So we can make the unconscious conscious. And that means we can have the programming come up and deactivate it. And the third is the concept of Wu Wei from the Tao Te Ching.
Mm-hmm.
And it's often translated as actionless action. I don't like that translation, because what that means, it gives the impression that I can just sit here and do nothing, and everything will be fine. Often that's not going to be the case. I prefer the definition given by Alan Watts, which is effortless action.
Nice.
So go with the energy. If you are at work, you're leading people, or you're a salesperson or project manager, whatever it happens to be, if you are finding it a slog to do what it is you have to do, you're not in effortless action. You're going against the Tao, the nature of the universe. If you look out the window, nothing struggles. Birds don't struggle. Cats don't struggle. Dogs don't struggle. The river doesn't struggle. Fish don't struggle. Nothing struggles except us humans. So if you're struggling, you're doing it wrong. Find a way that you can follow the energy to achieve the same outcome with less effort.
Oh, I love that. And I'm pretty sure you're on LinkedIn too, aren't you, Darren?
I am. I have been on that social, LinkedIn, Darren Fleming. Look me up on there. I'm
Excellent.
going to go with the beard and the shaved head and the glasses. Wouldn't be too many like that. And
No.
also,
Yeah, we will make sure that we include your website and your LinkedIn link on our website. Sorry, not on our website, on the podcast description as well.
awesome.
So, Darren, thank you so much for joining us here today at Adapt with Danette FM. Really, really appreciate it. And, I'm going to give you a hug, a good old virtual hug. Darren and I did fun yakking in Queenstown in May, which was so much fun.
Dart River. Yes. A photo of that popped up on my screen earlier today.
Oh, nice.
And,
we'll have to share that with the podcast, I reckon.
You, at the time, I had a very, very sore back, and you quite generously offered to paddle me down the Dart River.
And we survived, hey?
And we survived. So, yes, that was good.
Yeah, love it. And to our listeners and viewers, thank you so much for joining us and wishing you an adaptable week. Yay!
So,
Wow, what a good conversation. And
So good.
I have to say, if you just listened to that, I recommend going back and checking out the YouTube version, because Darren really, I feel like, is quite expressive.
Yes.
And so you can really get a whole second sort of understanding if you watch it, in my opinion. But
Yes.
if you listen to it, I'm sure you had a great time as well. What a great conversation with Darren. I loved a lot of his insights. Danette, I mean, first of all, it seemed like a really fun conversation to have, but did you have any other sort of takeaways from the conversation and what it was like?
I really so I definitely, growing your self-awareness is becoming aware of what goes on within you. And so he talks about paying attention to the energetic sensations when you're encountering a problem, to be able to go, what's that about inside of me? And I think, that's a really good way to get calm and centered. And then that allows us to be curious. So I really loved that insight. He's got some great experiences, and he has a massive vision to help people, live much better lives and be so much smarter with ease, which I think is just, in this world where everyone seems to make things harder. I really like that part of what Darren brought to the conversation. What about you, Jez?
Yeah, I had a few takeaways. One quote that I really liked was, if you're already good enough to be that, you would have already been that, which is good if you sort of just think that that you've been skipped out on or skipped over in life. I mean, sometimes that is true, but often it is that you just aren't actually at that sort of level with maybe smaller things. The idea around there's no such thing as a stressful environment. This was an interesting concept, which I liked. In its sort of broadness. I can understand. I mean, I feel like I have been in stressful environments, but I can also appreciate what he's saying, which is that it is your mindset is also part of what is creating that stress. But it does remind me of a video that I watched recently, which was about the richest people are the people that can have nothing and feel like abundant. They experience abundance even with nothing. That's the richest person, because they don't need everything else.
Yes.
And that concept of there's no such thing as a stressful environment kind of fits into that thing. It's like a mindset version of that. If your mindset is able to be calmed very easily, then there are no stressful environments. Yep. You are able to pull yourself out of that situation. So anyway, just seeing those two things in confluence did make me think of that, and there is quite a nice philosophy to all of that. Well, Danette, I think it's time for our mailbag segment, so let's jump over to Ask and Adapt. Alrighty, this is Ask and Adapt. This is the segment where people can write in and you will answer their questions that they may need help with. Now, you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can go over to Spotify and leave it as a comment. You can email us at adaptwithdanette@gmail.com, or you can go over to YouTube and leave a comment there. We will find it, no doubt about that. So any of those ways, feel free to send in an Ask and Adapt, and we'll get onto it. Today's one is from Mandy. So Mandy, here is Mandy's question for you, Danette. She says, "Hey, Danette, firstly, sending hugs. I wanted to know what methods you use when problem solving. Sometimes I struggle to think of new ways to think. Thank you and love the show, Mandy."
Great question, Mandy. And I'm constantly learning new ways to problem solve. One I really like, which is to use your body, and I'm going to demonstrate it. So hopefully those that aren't watching might go over to the YouTube channel, but I will explain. So you cross your arms the normal way and you ask yourself what the problem is. So I might say, I'm having trouble communicating effectively. And then to answer it, you swap your arms around. So you're holding them the opposite how you normally do. And then you just start sprouting ideas. So I might go and watch Jez do improv and learn some improv techniques. And then someone might say, what else? And I might go, I'm going to watch YouTube and Google best public speakers and communicators. And you can just then keep asking what else. And because your arms are crossed the opposite way to normal, it sort of sends you into the creative part of your brain. And I love that as just a really simple, use your body, cross your arms normal way when you ask the problem, and then swap them around. Feels weird, and that's exactly what it's supposed to. So that's something I use quite regularly, and I really love it in terms of just coming up with lots of ideas and always asking what else. Another one is asking myself, what is this problem like? So is it like something else I've experienced, or do I know someone else that might have been through something similar? And so I might go and have a conversation with them. Now, sometimes that conversation might look like you and I are doing, Jez, having a conversation like this. And sometimes it might look like I'm having a conversation with an author or a podcast host or something like that. So, yeah, I think that when we think about problem solving, remember there's lots of people out there. Lots of people have solved something potentially similar based on how you like to learn. It might be through a conversation. It could be through reading a book, listening to a podcast, watching a YouTube video, or any number of other ways that you take in information. And, not all problems are the same. So some problems are really simple and there's like a really simple solution. Some are quite complex, and reading books about people who've, solved the similar types of problems, that can give you hints on your problem solving. And some are totally unsolvable. And we're going to talk in a future episode with Anne Braithwaite around unsolvable problems. And sometimes with those, it's just literally working with others to try and get a little way through on that particular problem, because basically it can't necessarily be solved, but we can do bits of that particular problem. The other one I really love is to ask my brain before I go to bed and put a notepad and a pen beside my bed. And what I find is in the middle of the night, my brain often gives me a solution. And that is really a very simple way of working with your brain, because overnight your brain is making new connections. So it'll often find you the answer without you having to think too hard. So Mandy, great question. And I hope some of those suggestions are helpful. Jez, is there something you do?
I mean, actually, mine was also about sleep. Use that secret magic engine. I was going to say it's a hint that if people watched Mad Men, the TV show, Don Draper recommends, which is that if you don't know what to do, think of the problem, take a nap, and it'll probably come to you. So even if it doesn't, it's not going to hurt.
Exactly. I love that.
Fantastic. Well, Danette, did you have any final thoughts or things that you wanted to leave people with today's conversation, mindset mastery, and everything we've talked about?
So love this conversation with Darren, and I think that when we start to learn to explore what's going on in our mind and recognise that where we're resisting things, where we're not using that obstacle to learn and make it sort of smoother, we're probably creating part of the problem. So take time to work on your thoughts, notice when you're making up stuff, and I think read Darren's book, because it's a really good book on how do you look after and really grow your mindset mastery. How about you, Jez? Any final thoughts?
No, I think that's pretty much it from me. I really enjoyed this one, and we're heading towards the end of the season. Only
Yes.
2 more episodes left after this, so I hope people have been enjoying this. Only a couple to go. Anyway, Danette, did you want to leave the audience with anything?
Yes, so I'd love to say thank you to all our listeners and our viewers, and stay adaptable.